Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Rebel Eaters Club with commentary. So I've kind of decided that we're going to take inventory after the first season of Rebel Eaters Club, which means we still have 5 episodes left. One of those episodes though is 13 minutes, the other is 24. I figure we'll probably just cover both of those in one swoop. And then we only have 3 episodes that would still be split between 2 videos. The one we're covering today is Bye Bye Diets with Chef Fresh Roberson. I figure I'm not 100% sure I want to continue with Rebel Eaters Club all the way through, but I'd like to at least finish the first season. So that's what we're going to do. And without further ado, let's go ahead and start episode 4.
I want to tell you about the day, 10 years ago, when I learned how to truly walk again. It was a sunny morning, which is a pretty special thing in San Francisco. Only a couple months before, I had made the big decision that I was never going to diet again. There I was, standing at my front gate, like I did every morning, having the same thought I'd had every day since that decision. I thought, I'm going to try to go for a walk. Not a walk for exercise, not a walk to burn some calories, not a walk to punish myself for something I felt guilty about eating. Just a walk. Before I broke up with diet culture, I walked quickly because that helped burn calories. Trees were just nice scenery that helped my daily jog feel less terrible. Basically, the beauty of the world was just a backdrop for punishment. But that morning, when I walked out my front gate, I saw the emerald of the trees. I saw the sparkle of the sun. I heard the cars, the birds, the far-off laughter of kids playing in Golden Gate Park. That morning, the omnipresent little voice up in my head, the same one that had told me for 20 long years that everything, every step I took had to be about finally becoming thin, it shut up. It just stopped. I can't tell you how many times I had wished it away in those early days of my recovery, and it had not listened. But that day, I got my wish. I could see the world again, in all of its Technicolor glory, like when Dorothy gets to the land of Oz. And maybe this sounds a little hard to believe, but it felt like I hadn't seen any of that since I was a kid, since before I learned to hate my body. This moment was my homecoming. I stepped out onto the sidewalk into a world I had remade for me, for my enjoyment, for my delight, for my pleasure. And let me tell you, it was fucking awesome. Today, I want to introduce you to someone who works really hard to reclaim the world for themselves and their community. Chef Fresh Roberson. They are an activist, a chef, a healer, and a farmer. For Chef Fresh, the land and the food they grow on it is their inheritance. It's part of their homecoming. When I asked what treat they wanted to share while we talked, they said that they're not really into sweets, but...
Yeah, except I love pecan pie. And there's something really funny about that because, like, most pecan pie is mostly sweet. I don't really know how to make sense of that, but I don't think I have to.
Okay, all right.
Alright, so before we let them get into the next topic, I do want to refer to Virgie's talk about taking her walk and seeing the scenery and everything. So one thing, I think, one of the issues was that she was viewing exercise as a form of punishment. She likes to use that term punishment when it comes to exercise. Exercise really shouldn't be about punishment. If you have that mentality, then that is something going on with you personally. I don't think that that's, even with all of their talk of diet culture and stuff, I've never seen anything with diets and stuff equate exercise with punishment. Like, it's been interpreted as a trade-off. You do so much exercise and then you can have this piece of cake or what have you. So there is like that aspect of it, but it was never framed as a punishment. That's something that the fat acceptance group, I've noticed, does with exercise for some reason. When it comes to her, like, really paying attention to the trees that she sees, the sound of cars, the sound of children playing, to me, again, this sounds like mindfulness. It sounds like she was taking a mindfulness walk rather than focusing on achieving a goal. There's nothing wrong with that, and I think that that's something good to do on occasion, to have an activity that you do just to exist within that activity. I think that that's a good thing to do. Enjoy the feeling of whatever you're doing. For me, I've really taken to paint by numbers recently. It doesn't really build a skill, at least for me, it doesn't, but I enjoy the practice of not having to think about colors and just being able to enjoy painting without any real thought to it. It's just a great relaxation activity for me. It's kind of a mindfulness activity because my mind can wander because I'm not really focused on anything. The numbers and paints are all laid out there in front of me. I don't have to worry about it. So for her, it was a walk, and I don't. It's great that she took a mindfulness walk, but that doesn't mean that it was some revolutionary act against diet culture. It means that you have engaged in mindfulness. The thing that seems to have helped Virgie the most is mindfulness, and she's equated that mindfulness with fat activism, unfortunately. But in reality, it's mostly just been mindfulness. It kind of interests me how she equates her mindfulness with fat activism, just as she equated her toxic relationships that we've seen with fat phobia, when we all noticed something off with some of her talk of her previous experiences. And I'm sorry to go back to that guy again, but he was so fucking creepy in saying that he enjoyed when she dressed like a teenager. She equated that with in his need for control with diet culture saying she shouldn't eat, and in return she gets like a gift or something. But in reality, it was this creepy, controlling guy. So anyway, I just want to make some note on that before we got into the next part.
All right, like are you enjoying already?
Yeah, I just took a bite.
Oh my god.
Oh, and this one, mine is like a little different. I feel like I tasted some chocolate or something in mine.
Oh, what like the filling? You know, it's so shiny and it gets stuck on your fingers, and it's such a, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love that. I mean, I remember I went to this, like, I was in New Orleans and they were giving a tutorial on how to say pecan. They were like, a pecan is what you need during Mardi Gras, and then a pecan is a nut. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just so happy.
Oh, I love that because I definitely say pecan, but sometimes. But I love that description of it.
Yeah, I agree. So you don't know why. You just have this, like, I don't know, this like connection to pecan pie that you can't explain, that transcends words and reason.
Okay, so I have a connection to pecan pie. I get part of it. So there's like, growing up, there were certain things that I do not remember paying for. And pecans were one of those things growing up. Like my aunt would live next to a field that had a pecan tree, and you pick them all up, and, I would ride with my granddad out, and I don't know, I guess it was like some man that he worked for. He had like a whole grove of pecan trees, and so I could go and I could pick as many as I want to fill a bag. And then I came to college in Chicago, or in Evanston, and I wanted to make pecan pie. And so I went to the grocery store, and it was a bag of pecans, a very small bag of pecans, for $9.99. And I was like, I guess I'm not making pie, $20. Like, and that just felt so inaccessible to me. And I think I hadn't thought about that before. I hadn't thought about, like, that this thing that was always abundant for me. We had pecans, that would be this thing that, like, I would be struggling to get at that point. And so I don't know. I just think, like, that was a big, like, shift in understanding for me. And so, yeah, but I just love pecan pie.
Chef Fresh is a food activist in Chicago. Their life's work is to make good food accessible to everyone. Recently, they founded a collaborative food project called Fresher Together, and they provide meals for programs that increase food access for unhoused people, street youth, and seniors. They're also a highly trained chef.
I've just always known that I didn't want to work in the kitchen of a restaurant I couldn't afford to eat in the dining room of. And so a lot of the work I do is just, like, rooted in, like, food and connecting people and access and feeding people and taking care of folks.
Yes. I kind of want to dive back in a little bit into your childhood, into your past. So what was your relationship to food like as a kid?
Oh, it was interesting. I think I am the youngest child, so I'm the baby. And definitely I grew up in a household where, when I was still very young and before my sister moved out, it was like my sister and my mom, and my experience around them is that there was always a diet that happened,
Yeah.
And there was always this need to, like, shift our bodies. And I remember my sister, like, wrapping herself in plastic wrap, and, like, I just didn't understand it, but it was just, like, very, like, normative and okay. And I also learned that, like, movement and exercise was also specific to, like, weight loss,
Yes.
And so, my mom would, like, go, oh, I need to lose some pounds. Like, I'm gonna go walking around the lake. It was just, like, very much this piece that I saw as, like, this bonding mechanism around, like, my mom and the people she talked about at work. It was just like they were, like, going to the lake to walk around together because they were in some kind of competition. And so, like, then when I look back now, I have a hard time remembering whether, like, I was put on diets, like I was just expected to be a part of this diet, or whether that was, like, a means of me feeling connected to my mom,
So that thing, though, about her mother and the coworkers walking around the lake, and she said it was a competition, but she even said that she doesn't really remember it that well. So was it a competition, or was this a group of coworkers kind of banding together to diet, but also perhaps just be healthier. Like, there's nothing wrong with, I don't really understand their demonizing of exercise or eating well when it's in pursuit of weight loss. Like, other than their own victimization, I think that tends to be the big driving force of it, is that they want to feel victimized, and so they create it as a form of victimization of themselves. But, like, if you have an external factor that motivates you, an external motivation for these healthy activities, what's wrong with that exactly? What's, apart from your own sense of victimization at it, what is the issue exactly? If they're not going too far and they're doing everything in a healthy way, let's say they're like, I want to lose weight and I want to do it in a healthy way, so I'm going to cut out sugar, I'm going to cut down on processed carbs, I'm going to eat out less, and I'm going to focus on fruits and veggies and lean protein, and go for a moderate amount of exercise 4 times a week. Like, that's a perfectly healthy lifestyle. If they're doing that in pursuit of weight loss, I don't see what the issue is when the net benefit outweighs whatever your perceived victimization is, when it's not even affecting you. But that whole thing about her mother saying, oh, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to go walk around, it's not, like, I don't think that that's necessarily an issue, and I don't think her going with her coworkers was inherently a competition. Unless she said it was a competition, I don't know. I didn't get that feeling from what she said. But anyway.
I'm fascinated by this because what I've found is that, generally speaking, as horrible and life-sucking as weight restriction and food restriction dieting are, we have been socialized to use it as a way to create intimacy, especially if you're a socialized feminine. There's just something so deep about that. I first met Chef Fresh at No Lose, a really rad conference for fat queer people and allies.
At the time, No Lose stood for National Organization of Lesbians of Size. And I was like, what? There's a group of like fat dykes that get together and like have a conference? What is that about?
No Lose was the first time I saw a big group of fat babes just living their best lives without any sense of shame. It was like I could imagine how amazing a world without fatphobia could be, complete with pool parties, fashion shows, and a killer snack table.
There would be these like lounges where they would turn like a hotel room into like just a place where you could like chill, and there was like every snack you could think of, you know. And so there would be like bowls of beautiful M&Ms and cookies and chips and like carrots and hummus and like just a variety of things, you know, that image you get where you're just laying out and you being fed grapes, and there were always grapes too, you know.
No, and I think it's that idea of being welcomed into luxury. I don't know, it's interesting, right? Because food for me has long been a big part of asserting that I am this human who deserves to have these really pleasurable experiences. And do you remember, like, I'm just thinking like about like how I felt like as a fat person, I was only allowed to eat like steamed vegetables and chicken breast.
Yeah. I think that was just making me think about like having space to kind of freely eat however it is that you want to eat.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, like, I remember, like, this thing around being a good fatty, and when you're out in public, you know, like, you eat a salad, or you eat this, or you eat that.
Yes.
And then I remember, like, having this shift, and also, like, then being like, well, out in public, I'm going to eat a big sloppy burger because fuck you, diet culture, you know?
Yes.
But also, it's exhausting because sometimes I do want a salad, you know? Yeah, just always appreciated that, like, you can have.
Well, then just, like, fucking eat what you want, for fuck's sake. Like, this whole thing that they push about, you know, being a good face, you eat salad in public, I don't, like, clearly you were concerned about public perception. The thing is that you eating a salad out in public wasn't fooling anybody. They know that you eat a lot at home. It's because you felt self-conscious, you ordered the salad, and there's nothing wrong. If you just want the salad, then order the fucking salad. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there aren't nuanced factors here, but to a degree, I think that this isn't so much as fuck you diet culture as when you get older, you just say fuck society's perception. You just stop giving a shit at some point, and you do what you feel is best for you. And that's part of the reason why I have an issue with some of these fat acceptance people, is because they're trying to say that people that are doing what's best for them is somehow an attack against fat people. And that really kind of boils down my biggest issue with the fat acceptance community, is that they say that they go through all of this where they have to worry about being a good fatty, and you know, that they get tired of it. That's perfectly fine. Eat a big burger out in public, eat a salad out in public. I don't give a fuck. But then you try to say that someone else who who maybe wants to eat a salad out in public, or maybe someone who wants to work out in public is somehow harming you. So it kind of goes both ways. If you're gonna claim that you were a good fatty, now you're attacking people for, in your perception, being a good person by exercising or eating when they may not attach any morality to that at all. I sure as hell don't. I do it based on what makes me feel best. And I don't mean feel good or feel best in terms of what immediate satisfaction I'm getting from the food that I'm eating. It's about how are these choices facilitating my overall wellness and how I feel.
Have whatever you want. If you want some carrots and hummus, you can have carrots and hummus. And if you want some donuts and Oreos, you can have those too. And like, there's no shame, and not one is not right and wrong, and one is not better. And like, you have what you need and what your body wants.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that I love that you brought that up, because I've been thinking so much about that kind of this, I don't know what you call it. Maybe it's like a double bind or something. It's sort of like, on the one hand, we are living in these marginalized bodies and navigating the world and navigating food and navigating how people are treating us or imagining how they're experiencing us. And then, sometimes in the empowerment space, it does become about rebelling actively, which is another form of labor, which is another form of performing the work of being marginalized. Like, I have to.
Oh my god. I don't know why this part just irritates me, but they talk about, there's this whole talk about disproportionate emotional labor in a variety of circumstances under a variety of things. If you are undertaking this labor that you feel is for empowerment, or you're putting yourself on the lines of, and you're creating that headspace of, this is a performative act, this is an act of empowerment, and this, you are putting that on yourself. That's not any disproportionate level of labor that anyone is putting on you. You chose to take up that mental cause. Most people aren't paying attention. That's the thing that I think a lot of FAs don't realize, is most people aren't paying attention. Most people aren't paying attention to you. They're too absorbed in their own lives. And if they are paying attention to you, then chances are they're a bit younger, with entirely too much time on their hands, or they're assholes with no lives of their own. That's what the majority of people do. Now, there's also people like me and the fat acceptance commentary space that comment on you because you have attacked our own lifestyle. This is a disproportionate amount of labor to combat your misinformation and how you guys frame things in, quite frankly, terrible ways. Now, this disproportionate amount of labor, do I consider it disproportionate? No, I consider it a fucking hobby. I consider it something that I want to do. I'm stopping at the end of this year because it will have run its course. It's starting to wane in terms of fun for me. Not quite yet. I still quite enjoy it. But I can see how by the end of the year I might be tired and I don't want to do it anymore. So I have planned on kind of stopping at the end of this year. And while I may end up posting a video here or there, it's certainly not going to be consistent anymore. That's what I mean by kind of stopping at the end of the year. I'm not going to have a regular upload schedule anymore. And if some hot button issue should happen, I might jump on with a one-off video or something. But overall, this isn't disproportionate labor of me fighting against your misinformation. This is a fucking hobby.
Like, not only do I have to navigate all this stuff, I have to control how you're experiencing me.
No, you fucking don't. If you want to control how other people experience you, that's on you. We all control how people experience us all the fucking time. You think I act the same way in a goddamn job interview the way I act on here, or the way I act with my family? Fuck no. We all are performing in ways that curate our perception based on the place that we're in.
And whether you're doing it like by, being quote unquote a good fatty and like eating salads and doing all the things in public, or you're like, I'm going to eat this sloppy burger. They're sort of like opposite sides of the same coin. And I feel it is really interesting. It's something that I've been thinking so much about, because a lot of people ask me, on my Instagram, I do not like posting pictures of me eating the carrots and the hummus and the salad, even though that's a part of my life, right? Everyone needs food from the ground, right? It's like medicine. But I do feel this kind of obligation. If I'm going to be photographing myself and curating an image, it's going to be about rebellion. It's going to be about destigmatizing.
You do that to yourself, though. You are putting that restriction on yourself. You want to normalize fat people being able to eat donuts and burgers or whatever, and try to put it out there that this is a neutral food, well, then you should treat it like a neutral food. If that's really like your whole premise, then treat it like a neutral food. Put it beside the healthy foods. By curtailing the putting out pictures of you eating healthy foods because of this good fatty narrative that you have in your goddamn mind, then you are promoting that fat people eat the unhealthy foods. And therefore, you are essentially, whether you like it or not, kind of perpetuating that narrative yourself. Because it's only you as a fat person are only showing yourself eating these fatty foods, these negative foods, or whatever the morally negative foods, whatever you want to call it. By putting that out there as you only eating that, then you are only perpetuating the stereotype of fat people only eat heavy, fatty foods. Which means you, in your mind, because again, I don't really see these fatty foods as morally wrong, just unhealthy and probably should be had in moderation. That doesn't make it bad, that doesn't make it wrong. It means that these are more calorie dense foods that can fit in a regular diet just within moderation. But if all you show as a fat person and all you show is you eating that, aren't you perpetuating that stereotype that all fat people eat unhealthily? And then you say, well, I don't always eat that way. Well, that's all you show us.
The foods that I, as a fat person, I was quote unquote not allowed to have. And I do think about how sometimes this creates a box for me that I don't feel like I can navigate with full humanity. Like I don't know, I feel like the longer I've been in fat activism, the more I'm like, okay, how do I create texture around what feels good, what I like, the totality of how I exist without acquiescing to anybody's expectations except what I need and what I want, which I think is really, I don't know, it's really challenging. And I think this is like the trap of the marginalized person, you know?
Yeah, it's totally a trap.
The next thing I'm going to tell you feels really vulnerable. I've never spoken about this publicly before. For a long time, that trap, the trap of the marginalized person that Fresh and I are talking about, was enough for me. It worked for me. I was mad as hell at diet culture and fat phobia, so I was content dedicating my life to showing what a farce it all was, by any means necessary. You tell me not to show off my body? Well, now all I'm going to do is wear the tightest clothes I can find. You say fat girls are sad? Well, I'm going to wear the biggest grin all the time. You tell me I'm not desirable? I'm going to find the most socially desirable people I can and sleep with all of them. You tell me I'm only supposed to eat salad? I'm going to eat all the chili cheese fries in public loudly. Take that, fat phobia.
Okay, but you realize that that's not actually taking control of anything. They're still controlling you. That perception that you have of fat phobia, like, it's still controlling you. You realize that because it's still controlling your reactions and how you behave. You say that fat phobia is saying, you should eat healthy, so as a reaction, what do? You eat unhealthy. Just because it is a reaction to push an opposite, just because what you're doing is rebelling against that perception that you see, doesn't mean that you are taking a stance against fat phobia. It means you are working within it just to prove their point. Like, the biggest stance against fat phobia, I would think, would be to live your life however the fuck you want to. It would mean that you would take pictures of you eating both those chili cheese fries and some hummus and carrots. You know why? Because it's your fucking life and everyone can fuck off. And I'm sorry, my voice is starting to go.
I can't say it wasn't fun. It was. It was definitely a necessary part of my particular path to healing. I have no judgments or regrets. The truth was, though, sometimes it was also painful and lonely. Sometimes I just wanted to wear sweatpants. Sometimes I didn't want to smile. Sometimes I didn't like those people I slept with. Sometimes I actually did want the salad. Do not get me wrong. I still like tight clothes and sex and eating chili cheese fries in public, but what I'm saying is this. One of the biggest things that fat phobia and diet culture take from us isn't just the right to access a few things. It takes from us the sense that there is so much more. There's a whole wide world that we deserve access to. So the central question of my recovery has shifted from how do I say fuck you the loudest to diet culture to what do I want for me?
And that leads you to a healthier place. This isn't fat phobia. This is you maturing as a person.
More on that after the break.
Alright, we're actually really close to our midway point. So I'm actually going to just stop it here rather than stopping it at an awkward point since they're taking a break. And we'll end it here. Let me know what you thought about this so far. I apologize if there was something wonky with the audio. I'm not quite sure what was happening with, because I'm listening to this off Stitcher. And something, I heard it, I don't know if it was recorded that way or if it was just with my speakers or what have you, but there was a little bit of like stuttering in the audio. I apologize, but I'm hoping that it wasn't like too intrusive. But I mean, this whole thing, they try to say that, you know, they are having to put so much to fight diet culture. How about you just don't fight it, and how about you just live your fucking life? And like, they say that they're trying to live their best lives out here, and yet you say in the same breath there's also this, well, I was also trying to say the loudest fuck you to diet culture by doing all these other actions. So which is it? Are you just trying to live your life, or are you trying to take a stance? Because you can't do both at the same time. You can't say that all of my actions are just me living my life and people won't leave me alone, but then also say that by me doing this, I'm taking a stance against some perceived marginalization. So either your actions are for you or they're not. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your opinions on this in the comments down below. We'll go over part 2 next week. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.